Okay, so this session, I know a few of you probably dropped in a bit without the plan to drop in as you walked by. So what we're going to do today is in 20 minutes, I'm going to try to explain you the basics of delta sharing. I'm going to say, why do we need delta sharing? What is it? And we're going to go through the 4 main ways of sharing data inside Databricks. And we're also going to wrap up with an overview of what to use when. So first of all, my name is Julia. I'm a Databricks MVP. I work as a lead consultant / solutions architect. I focus mainly on lakehouses and migration from legacy data warehouses. And the last year or so, I have started with public speaking and also posting quite a lot of technical posts and articles on LinkedIn. So, why do we need delta sharing? So, historically, data has been fragmented. And it's been fragmented because your data lives in different places. So, it's been inside a company, but it's also been across companies and across clouds. So you have the typical setup that you can have a company, a big one, might actually run on all 3 clouds. So for them, it's already a problem to share data with themselves. You can have company 2, which is more a mid-sized company, maybe they're running on 2 different clouds. And you have company 3, which is a small one, so they don't have that much internal issues, but they do have issues sharing with their partners. So what delta sharing actually enables is to quite easily be able to both share data across clouds within your own company, but also not that much harder to share across companies. So what is it? So if you Google delta sharing, it will say that delta sharing is an open protocol that lets you share live data from Databricks. And for the rest of the presentation, when I say live data, that means that if anything happens to the table, the data will be updated live. So it will reflect in the thing that your consumer is actually watching. So what a protocol actually is that you have some provider that is using a Databricks account and a Databricks workspace. Then they use this thing called a protocol. We're not going to go into the technical details, but just think of it as a recipe for how you are sharing your data. It contains information about the API. It contains data about how your users are authenticating to get access to that data. And it also contains the list of what data you're actually sharing in each delta share that you create. And then on the third part, you have the recipient. So in Databricks, you can actually share, you have 2 different recipient types. You can do a Databricks to Databricks sharing. That is mostly what we're going to dive into today. But you can also do Databricks to open. So Databricks to open basically means that you're sharing data to something that is not Databricks. That can be straight into Power BI, it can be straight into Spark, or it can use actually any open API that connects to Databricks, the Databricks REST API for delta sharing. Of course, there are going to be some small differences when you do Databricks to open versus Databricks to Databricks. It might be you have to authenticate in some different ways, and it will be a bit more manual, but it still works quite smoothly. So the options we are actually looking at today are classical delta sharing in Unity Catalog using kind of the native delta sharing tab inside Unity Catalog. You have what is called clean room, so I would say it's like the version 2.0 of delta sharing. We will take a quick look at Marketplace and Federation. So I would say that this is the classical way of sharing data inside Databricks. It is a separate tab inside Unity Catalog where you can create shares and recipients. So what it is a native sharing interface that's built in. It enables live data access for internal or external users. So we typically add it to some person on the other side that creates that delta share in their Unity Catalog, and they will be able to see the data of that table that you're sharing, for example, if you're sharing a table. And then that person is the owner of that data. You can actually add permissions as you would in a normal Unity catalog. So on the next slide, we're actually going to I'm just going to play you a 2.5-minute video where you just look at how the delta sharing tabs look inside a Unity catalog. And you will actually see that in 2.5 minutes, I will be able to create a share in the delta sharing tab on my cloud. I will also add one recipient to be able to actually log on to that data. The third step will be that I assign tables from Unity catalog that I want to share. We'll today focus on tables, so I'm going to share one table. And then the fourth step is that the recipient actually accepts the share and creates a delta shared catalog on their side of the fence. Okay, so here we have opened the Databricks workspace, and you are inside Unity catalog, and we have clicked the delta sharing tab that appears on the top of your screen if you have enabled delta sharing for your account. So what we actually see here is that I just quickly can see data that is shared with me or shared by me. I actually have to start with step number 1, creating a recipient. So actually here I choose my own name. That typically is where the person works and the name of the person, for example. We're doing Databricks to Databricks, and we're adding an ID. That is something the recipients have to give you. So already now I have a recipient located on a different cloud. The next step is that we actually share the data. So I create a share. I do the name of the share, which should be descriptive of what the data you're sharing. Go to the next step. I actually here choose what I want to share. As I said, I only want to share one table, not the whole schema and not the whole catalog. I could do that as well. When you see here, you can actually add history of the table. So if the person is actually going to see the history of the table you're sharing with them. And then the next step, here you can actually also attach notebooks with code that you want that person to run so that they can get started. The last step is simply pick the recipient we just created. And right now, the data is already shared. The table is already in the recipient's Databricks workspace. So if we jump over to the recipient, you will see at the bottom that they have received a share. They click Create Catalog. They give the catalog some sort of name that is descriptive to them. And it will just create a delta shared catalog inside their Unity catalog that contains that one table that was shared with them. So if we now go on the side, you see that they have the delta shared catalog symbol in the bottom. And then it takes, okay, let's give them like 30 seconds. And they can actually see, they can actually give permissions on this table as they want, because they're now the owner on that side. So they are the ones that decide which ones in their workspace that are going to see the data. And just to show you that you can actually query the data 1 minute later, she's just going to do a simple select from that table to show that you can actually see the data. And when I did this together with my friend, she was really surprised that in actually 2.5 minutes, we were able to just share some data. Of course, it should be said that if you have stricter requirements, and that depends on the APIs, you might also have to add some IP addresses and whitelist IP addresses. But that's depending on how you have secured your own data. So let's take it a step further. So what we just seen was cool. I can easily share a table, but they will automatically see all the data inside my table by default. So you have to do a lot of stuff to restrict access. And that's not necessarily what we usually want, because we want to do least privilege rights. So what Databricks did was that they created the clean room, which is probably my favorite feature. So what is actually a clean room? Because you wouldn't necessarily understand that from the naming. So the clean room is a secure collaboration space where data is never exposed directly. So that means that the parties both bring their own data into a room. It looks the same as the first option I showed you with the delta sharing tabs. It just have a bit different content. They can both then add tables into that space. And if Linda had shared a table with me, I would see that the table exists and I will see the schema. But if I try to query it, I will be denied because I have not yet gotten the right permissions to see the data inside the table. So what we actually do is for Linda to be able to see the data inside my table, I actually write a notebook with code that she is allowed to run. That notebook can contain SQL queries, Python, wherever. Basically a normal notebook that I allow her to run on my data. And I can also give her the ability to do the same as we did in the previous demo, where she actually was able to create a table based on the notebook run. So the output of the notebook will actually be a delta shared table inside her Unity catalog. But that's something I decide. Yes. So I'm not going to do a video of that because we only have 20 minutes. But what it will typically look like is that I come from company 1, I run on Azure, I create a clean room. That clean room also runs on Azure. And then I say, Linda from the next company, which is running actually on AVS, I invite her into my room. The next step is that we actually, both of us, can take our tables from Unity Catalog the exact same way as I did in the previous demo, and we share the tables into the room. And here, the data is again shared live. So anything that happens to the data in the source will also happen in the clean room. And then I say that now she's actually going to be able to run some code on my table. And then we can actually join each other's tables together. And this is important that this is a static copy, meaning if I share this notebook, it will be a static copy. So if anything changes, if I want to add more, I have to do that in my workspace and then re-share it. And the reason for that is because clean rooms is supposed to be a lot more secure than the previous demo that we did. So we want to make sure that nobody else does something in the notebook and then it's automatically fixed so she can query more than she should. So what actually happens then is that she can basically, inside the Unity Catalog tab, she can just run the notebook. And if I have given her the code to save that output of the notebook into a table, it will appear in Unity Catalog as in the previous demo. So, perfect. Pictures. Okay, so Marketplace. So Marketplace is just a shop. It is where you can list whatever you want to sell or give away for free, depending on how kind you are. And it is basically data products. So it can be models, it can be notebooks, it can be data sets, or it can be tables, it can be catalogs. So basically, it's also, and once again, built on top of delta sharing, and it makes it possible for you to publish and access live data products. You can also specify that they're not supposed to be live, that they're going to be a snapshot in time, but the default is actually live. And you have two different ways of sharing data in Marketplace, and that is that you have the public Marketplace. So if you have enabled delta sharing on your account, you will see a Marketplace icon on the left pane of your Databricks. If you click that, you will just see a lot of different data products. So if you share data publicly, anyone that opens per Marketplace will see the product that you have listed on the Marketplace. But you can still be able to say that you can see it, but you can't touch it. So that means that I can say that people can have my data, but they have to request access. Then I get the email and I actually prove that you are able to get access of my data. Typically, people do this with smaller free data sets, for example, to get people started, getting them interested in their product before they actually have to kind of buy the full version. And you can also have a payment, so they actually have to pay to get access to the data. So then it would be a request access plus a payment. Let's see. And then we have the private version. So private means that not everyone that opens Marketplace sees my products. Only my partners, only the ones I'm collaborating with are going to actually see my data products. And data is typically delivered as read-only tables inside Unity Catalog once again. So how does it work? It's quite simple. You have a publisher, you have a marketplace, you have a consumer. The publisher has some data they want to sell, but they want to list it first. So they just publish some data set. It can be a model, and it can be notebooks. And they list it so everyone can see that it exists. Then this consumer finds this data interesting. They request access to the data. The publisher approves the request. And the consumer then gets the approval, and the data is then listed as an external table in their Unity catalog. So, the last way of sharing data is called Lakehouse Federation. So up until now, we have been mostly focused on that we are actually sharing data with someone else, right? Of course, clean rooms, there you can collaborate, so it's kind of both ways. But both Marketplace and the Delta Sharing Native was mainly focused that you're pushing data to someone that consumes it. But maybe it's the other way around. Maybe you are the person that wants to get access to someone else's data on some other system, some other database, or something like that. That's where Lakehouse Federation comes in. Databricks calls it a query platform. Basically, the idea is that you get live access to reading data that lives in another system. It can be databases, or there is a bunch of stuff that is supported. I'm just going to show the top most popular ones at the end of the slide. So yes, the Federation lets you query external data from other platforms, clouds, or partners directly from Databricks. And you don't move it and you don't copy it, you query it where it is. So how does it actually work? The external sources are exposed at external catalogs inside Unity Catalog. So you see, some of the things I'm saying over again, which I actually think is a good thing, because it feels, even though all these sharing capabilities feel different, they have different use cases, they still look and feel quite the same with some small adjustments so that you get to use it for different use cases. And you can read the data directly, just like you would your local table. Of course, there may be some latency because the data is not actually on your cloud, you're connected to someone else. And the data is still governed by the source system in general. And it's all usually, or it is basically read-only. So you're not supposed to write back to the data. A lot of companies use this for basically ad hoc. They're just curious about each other's data. Maybe they're trying to figure out if they can use that data in data themselves. So some people use it, for example, for a period to test if this data will actually run in a workflow and make sense for us. And some people just do it just to check out, and then they kind of do the proper ingestion into Databricks. So that's the most used use case. And the queries, depending on you can actually have two different types of federation. You can do what's called federated catalogs or federated databases. I'm not going to go into the details, but just it's nice for you to know that that exists, because there's many that don't know of that distinction. What it basically means that is one of them runs on your Databricks compute, and one of them actually pushes the query down on the source system they're getting the data from. So that might be relevant in some cases when it comes to latency, or if you're not the one that owns the data in both places, it's nice to know who is paying, basically. So the most typical source systems that people use federation for is Snowflake, Postgres, BigQuery, the legacy Hive Metastore, AVS Glue and Synapse. And actually, Hive is for anyone in Databricks that didn't started with Databricks before Unity Catalog, not everyone has migrated over to Unity Catalog. This is going to make your life a lot easier because it means that you can actually, table by table, you can have some quiet, you can have some control, and you can actually migrate in time over from Hive to Unity Catalog. I will also say that already this week they have announced a private preview where you can, with a few lines of code, actually convert your external tables. So you can take a federated catalog, you can turn it into an external table, and you can also convert it from an external table into a managed table. That will make any Unity Catalog migration a whole lot easier if you're still using Hive. So I'm not going to go through this because I'm out of time, but if you want to just take a quick picture, that's just my kind of instincts when I think about what type of delta sharing I'm using in each use case. I'm going to just hang around off stage when I'm done, so if anyone has questions or also connect with me on LinkedIn, I would love to talk to you. Thank you.